What's up, everybody? I'm gonna do this very quickly because I did not brief Omar before we went in. Omar, I'm about to throw it straight to you, but that's Omar, that's David, that's Jubilee. I am Charles. Welcome to another episode of the South Star Classroom. We got the whole gang back together. My voice is acting stupid, so Omar, I will let you. It is all you, brother. If we're doing check-in or not, it's completely up to you.
Oh, look at that!
Nice mug.
Oh, damn! That's a good ass mug, man.
That's nice.
Just wrapping the El Paso Leadership Academy. What up, everybody? Happy Tuesday to everybody. Hey, I'm excited for today's show. It's going to be really, hopefully, centered on some comments that we get from our audience. So I encourage a ton of audience participation, including now, which is Jubilee's favorite part of the show. It is the social emotional learning component of the show. It is Dr. Charles Cole's favorite moment all week long. He texts me, ladies and gentlemen, to let me know how much he looks forward to this particular small sliver of our show, which is just the weekly check-in. As always, ladies first. Jubilee, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully. I'm exhausted, but I'm okay. One day at a time. Happy to be here. The weather has warmed up. More birds are chirping and singing, and these flowers downstairs, like as I walk my dog, have bloomed like gardenia flowers. It's lovely. So
you hear that, Doc? Flowers are blooming and shit.
I do. You know, I guess I'll just go after her. I'm good. I had a big cold, it's gone, but there's just this leftover nagging cough when I speak, but it's fine. It's all good. It'll happen. But I will say, I have had the stuff with the birds. I got like birds nests because I'm kind of in the migration patterns that I've never had in California. So I get to see beautiful birds at this time of year. But you know that saying, like sometimes you gotta leave the nest or the mother bird kicks you out the nest. Earlier yesterday, I was having my coffee outside and she was teaching her babies to fly, and like if they just fail, they just fail. Like it was just an interesting nature moment. Most of them flew, but it was two that just fell out, man. I guess they said you better get ready, so whatever. But it was interesting. So that's my little bird nature story. And I don't hate SEL. I just hate how SEL gets abused. I will say that. Those check-ins are abused.
Which way would you like to abuse our social emotional learning moment?
I'm just saying, man. I think it's a good thing. I've written about it. I've written about SEL before, but I think it is abused at this point. And I think there needs to be some real, hey, man, if we're paying you to do SEL, are we getting the results? I just don't trust nothing that you can't check how well it's going on. That's all.
You can. There's rubrics out there and everything.
Yeah. Somebody who worked in a district that paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. I promise you there was no checks and balances on whether this SEL worked. I will not just turn this into a knocking of Oakland Unified, but there's a brother.
He just doesn't want to talk about his feelings.
There's a brother in the top right that I know as the beard of wisdom / beard of knowledge that knows Oakland much better than me, and he can probably talk more about this SEL than I could. But yes, I'm gonna shut up now.
Man, it's a good ass interlude to our show. David, what's up, man?
Not much. Good to see you all. Missed you all last week. I was traveling for work. Things are definitely picking up, including some travel. So that's good. And what else is going on? Yeah, I mean, a whole lot. I'm excited to talk about this topic today. I've got some firsthand account, stories that I'd love to share. And I think getting to the bottom of what is SEL, right? Because I agree with Charles. It's been the term has been used so widely to say to describe so many things that I feel like are not SEL. Right. So I'm happy to get into this topic.
Right on, man. I'm excited too, because there's a lot to discuss, and SEL is definitely germane. What's going on in our neck of the woods? Man, WrestleMania happened. Did we talk about WrestleMania? Did anyone? I mean, I hope our viewers know that WrestleMania is like the Super Bowl for some people. It is a large scale event, millions upon millions upon millions of people viewing globally. It is a worldwide global phenomenon now. It happened 2 weekends ago, and the storytelling was just fantastic. And we are all still reeling from the goodness that is men's professional and women's professional wrestling. Jubilee loves, adores, and watches to an extraordinary extent. She was texting me earlier and was like, when are you going to talk about wrestling on the show? Today is that day. It's that day. Amidst that, I got to tell you, the school districts in El Paso, it is, I don't know what is going on, dude. It's like Armageddon out here. It is nuts. Castles are crumbling, man. We're talking about school districts and $1.2 billion in debt. We're talking about the FBI investigating charter schools, the state taking over a school district, massive investigation. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. The state's now taken over Socorro Independent School District and Idea Public Schools, some of which those schools are in El Paso. Socorro's in a
they took over Idea?
They took over Idea.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, Idea is being investigated by the federal government, the FBI, particularly because they have crossed state lines. So now their financial malfeasance is basically a federal, something that they're federally investigating, and eventually will federally prosecute. Canudillo School District is being investigated widely for all sorts of not just financial stuff, but like improprieties with teachers. I'm like, it's nuts, dude. Isleta had to fire 8 of their teachers from every single high school to meet budgetary demands. I mean, it's popping off in Texas, man. It is nuts. And there is a lot of stuff coming from Governor Greg Abbott right now. When it comes to schools, when it comes to abortion rights, when it comes to affirmative action. I mean, this man is truly trying to push himself into the forefront of the national zeitgeist because clearly he wants to run for president in 4 years. So for all of us listening, man, the fight, it's going to be Florida versus Texas versus California 2028. And it's already started. So with that being said, we got a cool show for you all today, and it's a topic that I'm particularly interested in hosting. It's really, we talked a lot about the state of schools. We've talked a lot about the future of schools, but I want to give our audience an opportunity to really chime in today because we're going to have our own ideas about like, if we were to completely reimagine schools in the 21st century, and we all have thought to ourselves, what would I wish that I had learned in high school myself? I ask that of my parents all the time. What is it that you wish you had learned in high school that would have been valuable to you? Because I ask my parents all the time, like, what'd you learn in high school? And they're like, man, we partied. Like straight up like that's the answer. They were like, we don't remember. I think there's few of us. I straight up, dude. The majority of my parents,
say we don't remember.
I was like, what did you learn in high school?
And like a 3-year blackout.
Completely. I don't remember. Like I asked them and they're like, lunch was really fun. Like that's the majority answer, dude, is that lunch was really fun. And like, I don't like, honestly, like if I ask y'all, I think some of y'all would give me, well, I had these 2 teachers and I learned immensely from these 2. And this is what I learned. But like in asking my own parents at EPLA, at this point now, hundreds, if not thousands of parents, because it's one of my favorite questions to ask parents every single year. Like, what was your high school experience like? And what did you learn? They're like, we don't remember. Or lunch was really fun. Or we had a really good time, but we can't tell you at all what skill sets we learned. And I think for our audience for today, the main question that's driving us is, so especially for middle school and high school, because I think at elementary school, it's really so focused around, skill set building and reading and, tactile work and learning the simplicity of colors and words and letters. I think when we start thinking about middle school and especially high school, so really focused around the 9 through 12, for our audience, for us, what should we be teaching? what do you wish you had learned in high school that I think would have made a huge difference to you all? And before I open it up to our group here, the impetus from this came from an article that hopefully you all can share over the text message to our audience, is that Carl Jung basically built 5 pillars of leading a good life. Here are the 5 pillars that you need to know that if you follow, you're going to have a great life. And you start seeing a pattern, right? Like last show I hosted, we talked about these non-cognitive competencies for college and for career, right? So like the competencies being like really great self-awareness. So if you parlay that into what Jung's talking about, which is really cool, you start seeing these similarities of, damn, dude, like, hey, like, why aren't we teaching these things to our kids? And that's got me really thinking about like, what is it that we should be teaching? So if you want to, I'll bust out these this article really quick, just so that we can show it to our team. And
it's behind
David,
a paywall, but I shared it with everybody, but it's behind a
Yeah. I will send you a link to free it from set or with accounting.
Here's another one that's not behind a paywall.
Got it.
That one.
Yeah.
It's got a bunch of ads, but no paywall.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll hook it up. But I just want to kind of get your initial check-ins on this topic. Like, I even just basically, do you think right now what we're teaching in high school is the end-all be-all of the skill sets kids should have? And like, what do you wish that you were taught in high school that you weren't taught?
I guess, there's a few things. I wrote down some things when the question that came, and one, man, honestly, was just like sustainability, and that's like food. That's like things. Our weather is changing, and there's like, so every time the weather changes, like there's new things I have to do to my house. But I'm like, man, I just did not get this education on like how to take care of a home, or if something is a hole in the roof, things like that I think are fairly simple, but I just didn't have that skill set. I would probably add auto into that, but the car industry has shifted so much that like, I think the cars that, maybe our parents, or your parents, David, may have driven. I don't think those like now it's just a computer, but I think that there are just some general skills around survival that I think makes you just a better citizen. Like I think with the way just food is going and diabetes and like, I mean, we the brown people, man, like I'm black, like heart disease and diabetes and being overweight, like it's a lot of steroids and stuff in food, like knowing how to grow your own food. And thank God for Miss Helen, my neighbor, because she grows all her own greens and stuff. And I think true critical thinking skills, I think that's really what I try to teach out of energy converters. And I think that if you are starting over and building out these things, I mean, bring back true debate, bring back true, like, just understanding how to really look at a subject from different angles and not take everything so personally. And sorry, y'all, I'd be remiss even as I'm thinking about this, right? Like, not to mention, Iran shooting at the state of Israel. Like, I think that's like the fact that there are so many other things that are trending in front of that when that could actually, knock on the door of World War III, I think says a lot about our country understanding geopolitical climates and what these things can mean, right? Like, hopefully it's overblown and hopefully it doesn't escalate to that point. But we're the poli-sci nerds here. I think that that's not really a good sign. So I think those understanding where we stand in the geopolitical just circumstances of the world, and like, the way that the world may feel both good and bad about us as a country. I just think that that's important.
Yeah, man. I mean, I dig it because ultimately one of Jung's first concepts, right? One of his first pillars is good physical and mental health. And I'll jump into the mental health component of it, but like the physical component is huge because like, it's not just about the exercise, it's about like clean food. And like, yo, if you're straight up, like, sadly, so many of our folks are in food deserts and they're forced to eat McDonald's or Burger King because it's fast, it's cheap, it's easy. And they have no idea like how much chemical harm is in that food. And it's not even that, it may even be a situation that they know, and then they're left with very little choices because there's not a lot of food availability. And then ultimately, like, what happens thereafter? So I dig it. That's a really good start to our stuff. And we'll get into the geopolitical stuff later, because that's straight up, I think, a really good part of, in my opinion, why I was a history teacher and teaching history and getting kids to be cognizant of like, hey man, like, history isn't this boring stuff. It's really the way it's being taught can teach critical thought, but consciousness of what has happened, because how are you going to fix what will happen if you have no idea what has happened, right? And I mean, I'm with you on that one, man. David, like, what do you wish you were taught?
A couple of things, and I think there's definitely some crossover with the 5 elements here. It's interesting. I think there's definitely a physical aspect to education, which we lose. I think we spend a lot of time on, well, probably not enough time or in the right way, but like there's so much of an emphasis on what happens inside classrooms and not enough about what happens outside classrooms. So I wish we would like invest in real, authentic, rigorous physical education for all kids, right? And then also, I think related to social emotional learning, mental health, but in ways that actually are empowering for young people, and not like indoctrinating. And we'll get into that. I think in terms of content, I think a basic core set of like, knowledge is like universal knowledge is important. But I also think I wish I had learned it in high school as history in the world related to my own experience, and that didn't happen in high school. I also think there's a whole like set of like technical skills that we should be teaching in high school that we're not really doing yet, but we're starting to see more of it. So like actually getting your hands dirty, rolling up your sleeves, getting involved in like, career technical education, CTE. So I see it as like a pie chart, right? Social emotional learning, physical health, culturally relevant curriculum, and then also like, career oriented curriculum. So it's not really any one. I think they're all like, they should all be shared, or share a piece of the pie. But yeah, we'll get into more as we dive in. I haven't seen these in a while, so this is good.
Yeah, right on. And I like that you created kind of a pie situation. It's going to bring up a question later that I'll ask now, and we can answer later, just so that you're thinking about it. Which is like, who thinks up of this shit? Like, has anyone just taken a step back and like, I personally know, but I mean, has anyone taken a personal step back and been like, why are we making it mandatory to have 4 years of science? Why are we making it mandatory to have 3 years of social studies? Why are we making it mandatory to have 3 years of math? Why are you then incentivizing kids like me who are like, I want to graduate with the highest level? Excellent. I mean, we'll talk about all this stuff in a moment. As I'm absolutely with the emotional intelligence. It's on my note. Why did I need to take all this science and be forced into like chemistry and biology and like, cool, like I can tell you that I learned some stuff from those classes, but they are in no way, shape, or form in any way applicable to my life right now. I can't tell you any which way that I'm using biology or chemistry. And maybe a basic understanding of that freshman year would be cool. But I'm like, I would have much rather taken, a financial literacy course than pre-calculus. I would have much rather taken a course that focused on therapy, emotional intelligence, and some level of psychology to be like, how do we understand ourselves to better relate to others so that we can communicate more effectively, so that we understand like interconnectedness, so we can understand, hey man, even the way that I talk to somebody is going to spark a reaction. Wasn't it Einstein that said like 10% of communication is what you say and 90% is how the other person reacts to it? So like that's a really smart and intuitive way of being like, if we don't understand how other people react to things because we don't understand ourselves, I don't know, like, has anyone read the book like Sapiens? The entire reason that Homo sapiens became the predominant species over Neanderthals or over any other like Homo erectus, for example, is because our ability to communicate was significantly better. So it just leads me into a question that I will ask you guys after, you know, I hear from Jubilee kind of what her dream slate is. Like, who invents this shit as to what they think we need to learn and why? But before that, Jubilee, like, what do you think are things that you would have loved to learn in high school?
First of all, I probably would have been in the line with your parents when you say you asked them like, "Whoa, what did you learn in high school?" And you're like, "I don't remember." Like, I had a great time in high school, but I feel like
it's good time.
my deepest learning, I think, happened in middle school. That's what I remember most.
Damn, that says a lot.
Like my middle school, we had a pottery class. We had a real kiln there, and like we were making real cups and mugs and things like that. We had a photography studio. We had shop class, and you know, we had like real like hands-on experiences along with the field trips, along with my science teacher who would let me, you know, write on the board, and that helped me to memorize things, right? So I'd say I'll stretch it to like maybe ninth grade with biology and dissecting the frog and finding that it had some contents in its stomach and learning about biology and all of that. Like, but I can't say that I had any like deep learning between like 10th and 12th grade outside of that teacher that I always herald, Dr. Spiegel, who taught us about how to write a college paper. You know, we read some books, maybe had some good like discussion. In PE, I learned some folk dances from around the world. But like, you know, so I just feel like my deep learning kind of ended in middle school and if I'm stretching at ninth grade. But what I feel like I wish I would have wanted to learn, definitely financial literacy. I think, and again, I think this is all, I don't know, because sometimes it comes down to the haves and the have-nots because maybe you get this at home. And I think sometimes we might put too much pressure on schools and trying to make schools teach things that probably should be taught elsewhere, right? But I remember having a budgeting class, and I didn't learn how to budget or master that by the end of the class because the professor was just really honing in on like compliance. So whether or not we mastered it and knew how to get out of the red into the black and all of that, it's like it was more just like a checklist, like did you come to class, right? So but financial literacy I think is important. Language is important. And my overall framework for this is like how good of a job are we doing at ensuring that our children can be competitive amongst one another and against other nations. Like if we are, you know, to your question, Omar, we're thinking about like who's sitting back and planning this. Are they thinking about our children like futuristically? Like, are we able to go toe to toe from some dude from Germany, you know, from somebody from Asia, you know, and say like, all right, yes, they're going to perform well. They're going to be able to compete for the same jobs or whatever. Both are bilingual. Both are well oriented in the sciences. Both are mathematicians, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so financial literacy, language, I think those both speak to the whole competitive nature, and then also just being able to combat poverty and being able to take care of yourself, and then being able to, you know, become an investor or what have you, and not have money run you, but you have your money work for you. Collaboration and teamwork, which I would put as a thread in all the things. Like if you're going to be competitive, if you're going to be in this world, you got to know how to work with people, even if you don't like them. So that would be my social emotional piece. And then I would have loved to learn more about myself, like my learning styles. I think school's a great place to be able to learn about that. My first, you know, conversation about that happened when I went into leadership in 2007. We did the East, West, North, South, like which are you detail oriented? Are you big picture? Are you the heart? Are you the, And I'm like, man, I think that kids should know that, because the more you know about yourself as a learner, the better of a learner you become. And then okay, well, maybe I'm introverted. I'm not great with working with groups, but I know how to, enact this skill set right now because I got to talk to Johnny, Ray Ray, and Mookie, who I don't like, but we have to do the science project together, right? So I do think that there should be more like personal learning a part of, the school curriculum.
Oh, hey, man. I mean, you're speaking my language. We're doing that at EPLA Middle School. The entire curriculum is, we build, we team, we lead. We build is really about learning their leadership styles. They get colors, right? Am I a blue? Am I a green? Am I a brown? Am I a green as a planner, right? Like I'm really highly organized. That's what I bring to the table. Reds are aggressive and action oriented. And it's the idea of like, how do we understand ourselves? In that comes, I want to just quickly, if you aren't able to access the 5 pillars, I just want to quickly go over the 5 pillars. And then I kind of want to jump into this question about like, why are like these learning requirements the way that they are? And I've got some like very serious opinions on things that we should be teaching and maybe ways that we need to like rethink our approach to state government and have them reconceptualize some of these educational programmings, because I think that it's fallen so far behind that our kids are no longer getting skill sets that I think are applicable to the 21st century. But Jung talks about this, and think about the fact that Carl Jung was a philosopher in like I don't know what it was, like the 1960s, dude. Like he died 60 years ago. So like we're talking about Carl Jung brought this stuff up in the 1960s, and yet I've seen very little push from our school systems to do anything that would even resemble these 5 skill sets, right? So good physical and mental health. Okay, cool. Like schools teach physical education, but one of the things that we're really, emphatic about is what does good health look like in terms of the food you're eating? So Doc talked about like, man, I wish I knew how to grow my own food. And it's like, dude, kids have no idea that like Takis and Dr. Pepper does not constitute like a great diet, right? And like, dude, I've seen the aftermath of Takis and Dr. Pepper, most notably all over our floor after they exert like some level of like physical strain. But then, that leads into other things. Like, do they understand the effects of alcohol and drugs? Do they understand the effects of smoking? Like, do we even teach these things, or do we just kind of skirt it all underneath the rug? But then ultimately mental health. So good physical and mental health. And I think we will get into a huge discussion about mental health here, because I have a very, very strong opinion and strong hypothesis that mental health and consciousness will be the panacea of humanity. Like it is what is going to lead to the escalation and elevation of humanity, even beyond technology. But Jung continues, right? So his second pillar is good personal and intimate relationships, such as those of marriage, family, and friendships. So we're social beings. And if our social abilities to be social become fragmented, it really affects our happiness and our ability to not only cooperate professionally, but personally. You're seeing all these articles pop out that this is like the loneliest generation in the history of humanity. Like this is one of the loneliest times because people are, stuck at home and they're either like only communicating technologically, or their friends are only on, the PlayStation or the Xbox, and that is their friend community, and they're playing video games the whole time. That the loneliness has driven state governments like in Japan and Korea, South Korea, to actually do something about it because people are so markedly lonely, right? Third pillar being seeing beauty in art and nature, which I think is actually kind of cool, which is essentially understanding like we're so far out of reach with nature, and we're so far out of reach with things, simplistic things like music and art, that it deeply affects our state of happiness. The fourth is a reasonable standard of living and satisfactory work. I mean, Jesus, dude, like how many articles are coming out about basic living rights and minimum wage and the ability to do a job where you feel like you're contributing to something bigger than yourself. And the fifth being a philosophical or religious outlook that fosters resilience. And I think that resilience is a huge thing, because what I hear from professors, from parents, from people who are leading jobs is like, these kids don't know how to fail. Like, there's no resilience. Like, they fail and stay failed. And I'm like, damn, dude, like if these 5 things became a core way of thinking about our educational program, like why the shit are we still teaching like chemistry as a mandatory class? Like, I get it. If you want to, in high school, become a doctor or a scientist, you should go on a track where you are probably minimizing your social sciences or maximizing your science. But why am I being forced to take chemistry? Right? I would have chosen to take more social studies and more English. Why am I forced to take PG pre-cal and even algebra 2? Like, what the shit do I need algebra 2 for? So I think I get into the major question of like, why are we teaching this shit? And it bumps into our next question, which is like, what are our thoughts about teaching mental health and therapy and emotional intelligence in our schools? So, man, I put that up to you all, because like, why the hell are we doing this, and why aren't we doing this? And come at me, like you think Doc's sitting here being like, man, I don't need no mental health in school.
Didn't say that. Never said that at all.
Teach me some literacy, baby.
Never said that at all.
I'm putting it in your mouth.
No, I wrote a whole book where I say the exact opposite of what you said. So I've never said that.
So why are we doing it this way?
Well, one, I mean, you're kind of presupposing that everybody likes and agrees with Carl Jung. Like, you had a lot of people that didn't like him and felt that his lack of. I remember reading Jung when I was in college, and the biggest critique was he lacked a lot of empirical evidence. He just didn't. It was kind of his own thoughts and stuff like that wasn't backed. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the things that was said. I think that, I mean, in California, you need 2 years of science, like three recommended, but 2 years, right? I do think that you need to have a basic understanding of science. Here's the thing. Which question am I answering? Because there's a question that we got on the thing, and then I want to make sure I'm answering your question that you're asking right now.
Right. The simple thing is, you can go with the first question any which way you want. Is why
this
the hell are we learning the things that we're learning? This is the real question that we posed earlier, like meditation, self-care, emotional intelligence, and consciousness.
So is this the one I'm answering? I'll answer this one then. Because I don't want to go off.
It's our show, man.
Well, yeah, I don't want to run out of time. I want to make sure we get to the questions that you you worked hard on these questions. I think here's what I think. I think that I don't know about meditation, but I think these things are important. I think they're very important. My thing is, schools are not doing a good job of teaching the basics of what they are actually supposed to be able to teach. I'm not then going to add something with this level of complexity, like as another thing that they are failing at. Like, I would like for more than 3 out of 10 Black kids in California to be able to read on grade level. I would like for more kids to be able to do basic math so they can live and balance. You don't really balance a checkbook anymore, but manage their finances. Like, I would want us to have a basic understanding of science, so when a fucking plague comes, like what we just experienced 2 years ago, we don't get a bunch of pseudoscience being able to come in and confuse a lot of people, and a lot of people die like needlessly, right? Like, I think those things are important. I learned in that's where you learn about cross-contamination, or hey, like salmonella. When I was in school, I think that was when salmonella was like the big thing, right? Or I remember Jack in the Box back in the day when I was a kid having that big outbreak. The point that I'm making is, these things are important. And I don't know if it's fair to put that on an ailing school system that already can't do the basics that it's supposed to be doing at a high rate. That's what I would start by saying. So Charles does not think these things are not important. I want to be very clear that I never said that. But yeah, I'll definitely start there.
So I think they're both. I mean, I think what Charles is bringing up is definitely true. I think we can all agree on that. And then the second question is, are schools equipped to provide students with the basics if these like foundational things are not in place that we're looking at here on the screen? So this is like this is just one model of what is currently kind of recognized as social emotional learning. It doesn't say anything about drag shows or this or that, so people can kick rocks on that. But this is like the foundation of what we call social emotional learning. And there is actually kind of a conceptual connection to what we were talking about earlier with Carl Jung and his kind of his thinking around happiness. It's self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision making, relationship skills, and social awareness. That's all that it is. And there's actually like curriculum that is out there that can be used to teach these things, right? And you have to teach it at a particular level. You don't want to be like prescriptive, but it's about empowering young people to basically be self-aware, and in that sense they can be aware of others around them. And I think if we're not doing this kind of work, if we're not establishing these kinds of environments, it's going to be very difficult to actually make the push and advance on the things that we talk about, literacy and mathematics, right? This is the fabric. This is the fabric of school culture. If these things are not in place, those other things are not going to happen. You're going to spin your wheels. You're going to spend money. You're going to burn people out. And kids are, they're not going to receive any kind of benefit or impact to what's happening. Because you have to think about culture, not first, not second, but you have to think about culture and academics at the same time. So I don't know if this is where you were going, Omar, but I wanted to kind of put this out there as a framework. So when we're talking about this, this is not rocket science. This actually can happen. It's happening in many school districts. And these are actually the soft skills that young people can take into their adult lives. They're going to probably forget about the Pythagorean theorem. They're going to forget about zygotes. They're going to forget about a whole bunch of stuff, but they are going to remember this.
Well, I mean, that's my point, right? Which is, if you're creating every single exam and every state accountability to specific skill sets, right? So like Texas, for example, you got to take an end of the course exam on biology. You got to be able to pass biology. And this goes kind of into what Doc was saying, is like, I think that there's basic science that everyone needs to know. So he would be in line with an exam like that. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're like, hey man, like that's cool with me because that's basic scientific stuff. Where are we putting to the forefront some of these skill sets and saying we're actually going to find a way of assessing these skill sets and develop these skill sets purposely? Because
right.
I think it leads to your point, David, which is like, this is so far off the radar of teachers' minds, of administrators' minds, of superintendents' minds, that there's no way of knowing if what they're implementing, and Doc was alluding to this earlier, if knowing what they're implementing is actually effective, there's no way of assessing that effectiveness. And then through assessment, and I'm not talking a damn test, just talking with the kid to basically with a rubric to say, hey, here's where your communication is at, or here's where this is at. Here are the next tiers of this rubric. How do you think you did on this? And then being like, not well, like, what do we need to work on in order to develop this skill set? Like, that's so far off the reservation of education that it goes into, how are teachers even going to have the infrastructure to develop these skill sets without training? And then what training is going to happen if this isn't being pushed to the forefront as a priority? Who's pushing this to the forefront of the priority? And then ultimately, like, in my opinion, I think that the people that make these exams are making a bundle from having the status quo as what it is. And if you start eliminating some of these assessments, you're going to have some very powerful lobbying at the state level to be like, don't get rid of my tests. Like, we're making a lot of money from that. That's the bread and butter. And I wonder if they're having an undue burden of influence on things that we should be teaching, and no one's really pushing a forward progressive agenda. Because I don't know if anyone can absolutely agree on some of the tenets that we should be teaching forward, man. And like that creates, like I said, controversy and shit. So, I kind of jumped in here with you.
I did not say anything about a test on that, but it's fine. I'll let you go. I just didn't want.
I'm putting words into
you
your
are
mouth
left and right, bro. Left and right.
You are writing books. You're besmirching Carl Jung.
My next answer, I'm just going to quote myself. Go ahead, Jubilee.
I mean, of course, I think all of this is important in public education. I think the sore spot for me is like the public education needs the help of community-based organizations, right? Like it's just one part of the whole. And every time something pops off, we bring it to the school and be like, all right, how y'all gonna fix it? What y'all gonna do? What are the teachers gonna do? What are the teachers gonna do? And it's like, as the pendulum swings or whatever becomes the new focus, now we need teachers to be able to do this and do that. It's like, please, it's a bit much, right? So I kind of am with Charles on this idea. I'm with Charles and David in terms of like, let's get the teachers proficient at what they need to do, because in terms of teaching content, reading and math. And I also agree with David when he says you got to think about both simultaneously, culture and academics, right? I think that the skill set, though, I think we need to look more at teacher preparation programs, right? And leadership preparation programs, because that's not necessarily what they're talking about, right? So I don't know, people are like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. Teachers come to school because they graduated some kind of program and got a degree and they got certification that says that I could be in a classroom. Well, if this skill set doesn't necessarily exist at home, it could. Some children could come from a home where these skill sets are practiced regularly, and some maybe not, right? And then we go to the school and we're saying the school should do it, but then we're also assuming that teachers have shown some kind of strong level of understanding or mastery for these skills as well. Like, how do we know that the teacher is self-aware? How do we know that teacher is a responsible decision maker? Like, we know what you look like when you're here during the week, but like, what about on the weekend when you possibly got a DUI? I don't know, right? So I just think it needs to be a tiered approach. And I would really, when you said like who's pushing it or who's going to be, advocating for it, of course, it goes up with the government, which Charles always like, the system, nobody's going to fix the system. But I do think that conversation should be had about what our teachers trained in, right? Teachers are still being asked to make stupid lesson plans with words I can't even pronounce that they never roll out in a classroom. Many teachers, they are reading teachers who still don't know how to read. They still don't understand the science of reading because maybe their teacher preparation program is antiquated, So anyways, I just think, yes, it's important. I think that, like any good shift in a system, it has to be rolled out in a tiered way. And if we want to see this happen for students, we've got to strengthen the core of what teachers are learning in their programs so that they can then implement it in classrooms. And we got to get the community involved. We got to get the experts involved. Teachers are not necessarily experts on this stuff. And I don't think it's fair for us to always expect that teachers are the experts on this. This is social studies, this is mental health.
I don't think it's fair or smart.
Yeah, like we're not like experts.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You could have a gift for it or like a way to connect to a kid. And it's like, you have that understanding, right? But that doesn't necessarily make me an expert. Like I think I can get kids to do lots of things, right? And kind of connect with them in that space. But I'm not an expert. Let the experts do it.
So I think David.
I spent 3 years, and I've talked about it before on the show, as a head of school at a charter in Oakland, Urban Montessori. And it was a very diverse school, socioeconomically, racially. We had families coming in from the hills that could afford a $40,000 private school, and we had families coming in from deep East Oakland that struggled to get their kids to school. And we recognized that, being a diverse, and then our teachers, going to Jubilee's point, our teachers are coming from all kinds of different places too, right? And so and this is even before people were talking about like social emotional learning. I mean, it's not like it is now, but we recognize the need to have some kind of grounding or norming in the way that children interacted with other children, adults interacting with children, and children interacting with adults, right? And so what we did is we adopted a curriculum that was not being offered in the teacher training programs, and we provided training to our teachers. So this is like a very basic level example of what it looked like, and it had a great impact. So I've talked about it. I'm not making a commercial for them, but essentially there are lessons from kindergarten all the way up to like, I think 8th grade, for these tools, the way that we teach the tools. I think kids are coming from different home contexts, different cultural values. I think we can agree that these things are generally pretty safe, nothing too controversial here. So if you're a young person or if you're an adult, right, something happens, you feel yourself getting elevated. Do you have a way to calm yourself down? Utilize your breathing tool. Do some breathing. You have a quiet, safe space tool. Is it time to listen? Use the listening tool. We taught empathy. Use the empathy tool. These are like universal soft skills that I was talking about before, that are applicable in the real world. Personal space, using our words tool as opposed to like, using your hands, right? The garbage can. Somebody says something, it upsets you. Is it that big of a deal, or can you just put it in the garbage can and walk away from it? And so, I won't go through all of them, but we use these. We taught them in a developmentally appropriate level. We adopted them as adults that worked in the school. We shared this curriculum with our parents. And I still use these to this day in some way, shape, or form. So when I talk about social emotional learning, that's what I'm talking about. A very concrete way to teach a basic set of core kind of concepts that kind of provide a level playing field for people. And I think that was pre-pandemic. I think these things are even more needed today. But as you can see, it's not too invasive. I don't think it pushes back against anybody's home culture. It should be kind of like not so controversial. And I wish more schools would adopt this type of curriculum.
Well, and I think you're doing a very consciously aware level of SEL. There's levels to SEL, and the whole thing that was critiquing SEL as being, poverty blind, like colorblind in a bunch of different ways, can perpetuate some things. But I just need to defend myself against these horrible things that Omar has put on my jacket. I just want to just make sure on page 74.
Omar, you really did it this time, Omar. Wow.
On page 74,
I do it on purpose.
Beyond Grit and Resilience, the cat in the bottom right corner. I'll just say it quickly. Focus significant attention on both academic and social emotional wellness when conversing with teachers about your child or you as the educator. Ask questions specifically about academic achievement. Ask questions that go beyond the child just receiving a good grade. Find out if your child is reading on grade level. Ask if he or she is mastering math at grade level. If you sense that the teacher is unsure, blah, 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 blah. Do the same for social emotional wellness. Ask your child's teacher what your child is passionate about. Ask your child's teacher how your child deals with anger. Build in the pillars that lay the groundwork to be resilient. Ask your child's teacher what their discipline policy is and invite them to partner with you around your child. This type of engagement helps disrupt the negative outcomes many Black children face in America's public schools. I just want to just be very clear before Omar. And then the thing about SEL that I said was, however, much like Grit within its motto, SEL is limited and can exacerbate racist practices against Black males because it focuses on an individual rather than the systemic efforts without taking into account the opportunity or lack thereof to begin with, and the skill without examining who has that power. SEL as a whole perpetuates a colorblind, poverty-blind, and social context-less existence for students and does not force educational leaders to confront the overall environment, leading to the acute way GRIT or SEL adds to the pervasion of how students are being failed. Sir, damn it.
Boom.
I didn't say that. I didn't say nothing about no tests.
Look at you get fired up. I mean,
I just had to. You just put something on my jacket,
and you're like, I don't know about my voice today. And boy, did your voice decide to come out as you became Stephen Douglas in your oratory.
He's turning red.
Nah, man, because you put something on my jacket. I wasn't gonna say nothing, but he just put that on my jacket.
Shit, every time I put shit on the jacket. Look at the eloquence and intelligence that came out. I mean, not to say that it ain't coming out every show. It is, but god dang, man,
there you go. It's all in there. I wrote all about it.
Get the damn book.
Real quick, Omar, before you continue, we've got
quick. We got 9 minutes left, man.
Well, I know we have people listening, so I want to encourage in the last 10 minutes, if you're listening or watching on YouTube primarily, drop a question or a comment in the chat so we can interact with you.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you for
really
being here.
wish. I mean, what up, Toya? It's good. You're up on the hill. I guess does that mean Capitol Hill? Discussing gun regulation and mental health. Right on. Something that we're talking about today. That's badass. I want to quickly interject, and then we got to wrap up this show, man. We got to have final thoughts and everything because we're already done. I think one of my major questions is, and I'm really glad that you talked about Montessori. I'm really glad that Doc talked about these are things that have unequivocal science behind it. And I'm really glad that Jubilee really interjected to be like, well, what are the systemic ways? And I know, David, you said, what are the systemic ways we're setting it up? But she really said, this is a systemic issue coming from teacher preparation, right? Which is like me asking, like, experts say, like, who's this expert? Like, who are these experts that are creating these statewide curriculums, and what is their expertise? So even on this show, which I think is such a solid philosophical, political science question to ask, it's why is Young an expert? Now, it's a super relevant question, and I don't want to get into it all. I really just use Young's Pillars as a solid platform for discussing this. But when I ask, like experts say, there was a really cool opportunity here in El Paso recently where the Texas Tribune, which is a huge paper distributed to the state of Texas, had panel discussions in El Paso specifically. They do it every year, and they come talk about like the state of the border and El Paso and education in El Paso, and particularly our, low-income Latino population here. And it was great to hear these panels from what, quote, were experts. But as I sat there listening to these experts on education, and I definitely use those in quotes because I, in no way, shape, or form, and I'll be very definitive, think that the people on the panel have an expertise. They are not experts. Like there was a superintendent on there that I think failed miserably to exert any level of expertise on what the root issues are. They could tell us what the issues are, but they could never get to the root of the issue. And it makes me question expertise because, like, in one instance, they were talking like, hey, man, we're getting kids into college, but why aren't they graduating from college? And they couldn't figure out the root issue. And I know what the damn root issue is as to why they're not graduating from college. And Savannah brought it up, and even Jubilee brought it up earlier, which is like, kids aren't graduating from college because they have no idea what the fuck college is for. I mean, the four of us know that shit because we have a podcast, because we are fucking experts. They don't know what college is for. And they're not being taught in high school, not just about possible careers, but linking their passions and things that they're actually interested in to those careers so that they've got a very scheduled slate of curriculum that they are learning in college, and understand why Dr. Cole has written fucking books about this. Like, these are things that he's discussed on panels that I've been there, and he's mentioned this in his research. David's talked about this a ton, but it brings up the question that even the experts aren't fucking experts. And we're sitting here taking cues from these people and letting them decide the future state of our education and saying on a podcast, man, look at this really great structured way Montessori is doing social emotional learning. This is really good. I wish other schools would adopt it. And it's like, there's got to be a time that we interject ourselves and simply say, like, we got to come in as experts and figure out ways of interjecting this stuff. Because whether we agree with Young or not, I think that change has to happen. And I think we can all agree that the skill sets that kids need in the 21st century aren't being applied in schools. And what are we going to do about it? So I just kind of went and pushed my final thought forward. We're at final thoughts, people. Where are you guys at?
Who you calling on, host?
I mean, I could call on you all. So, Doc, why don't you get us started?
Yeah.
Then we can end with Jubilee.
Yeah, I think it was a good topic. I wish we had more time to kind of open up around it. Excuse me. See, I done used up all my talking for earlier. I think well, you know, what I would kind of say about this, man, is like, you know, I don't know if things are gonna change. I don't know who's an expert, who's not. I don't know if your superintendent's competent or whatnot. I think listen to what David said. If you got this, rewind and listen to the things that he said that his school does. And I think that when you need to start interviewing the schools that your kids go to, whether you got choice or not, I think you need to ask these questions and know what questions to ask. I think it wouldn't hurt if you needed to reach out to us or David and be like, hey, what are the questions I should be asking? Because if your school doesn't provide those things, you should go find those things outside of that school building. You need to find it. You need to figure out where to get those things. If there is not a strong self-aware form of SEL, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to go and figure out, like, all right, like, where else can I get this? Is it at my church? Is it with Uncle David? Is it with such and such? Is it with the boys club? Is it with this basketball team, the soccer team? Like, there's nobody that is going to be responsible for your child. We just talked about the lack of checks and balances and things of that nature, even in the things that they went to school for to actually teach is subpar. So, you know, you're the only person that got to live with the results. And so I suggest asking those questions. And if it's not available in your school, you should be finding outside forces to make sure your kid gets what they need so they can be upstanding citizens that can take care of themselves.
David, and then Jubilee.
Muted. All that greatness you just spit, man. Nobody heard it. Y'all missed
it. It's a two-part question for me because I think, you know, we're actually like, we are consumers of education. Like, I have a kid that's about to go into high school. And, you know, we shopped around to a bunch of different schools and we didn't see anything that was perfect, but we figured, you know, we could like circumvent or supplement, you know, on the home front for X, Y, and Z, because we have the ability to do that. But I'm thinking about families that don't have the ability to do that, and rely more on school for kind of, you know, a lot more than we might in our home. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I think coming out of the pandemic, you know, we have all seen the data on like learning loss, right? Everyone's experiencing it. We've all recognized that, and we might disagree on how it happens, but we've recognized the need for more attention to, you know, mental health and social emotional needs of children, and paying attention to that, because without that, you can't actually get to the learning part. And I think it's more challenging for big systems to actually lead in that work. And so what I have to offer is, especially in this time, I would hope to see, you know, us be able to lift up examples of like districts, maybe not big districts, but small districts that are doing it, charter networks. There's the whole world of like, you know, micro schools that we talked about in a previous show. So just, you know, to see how different systems are kind of reinventing themselves in 2024. And I'm not throwing out, you know, districts. I know several districts are actually leading on this front. So, you know, maybe part 2 of this is like actually highlighting some promising practices.
Nice.
Oh, so much to say, so little time. I think I was reflecting on like when I was principal and all the different like trainings that I got over the years. They would have us visit schools that had like strong school culture. Um, and just a few months ago, I realized that even in this day, almost 17, 18 years after that point, there are some schools that still don't value the power that a strong school culture can create and the kind of shift that a strong school culture, can endorse when it comes to building positive social emotional skills. And so that kind of, saddens me. But I think to your point, David, there is something to be said about continuing to look for and lift and highlight those districts, big or small, that are valuing that, and that's an everyday part of when you walk into a building that's in their district. This is how we do things here, right? We are resilient. We do show, grit. We are self-aware, or whatever the skill set is. I don't think we should, throw it out. I do think at least if we start small or maintain what has been done, as it relates to like building strong school culture, that's a start. And I don't think you need to be an expert to do those things, right? But when we get more into the murky waters, right, self-perception and I don't know, like all the mental health stuff, I think, let's let the experts do it. And I feel like the question for me still remains, it's like when we talk about what should schools teach, it's really about like, are we preparing our children to be both locally and globally competitive, not just for the world today, but for the world of the future. And then lastly, it's like everybody has a bunch of question marks in terms of where can we get this information? It's like there's enough data out there, I think, from if we just look at 2020, from the pandemic when the world stopped and everyone is stammering and doesn't know how to log onto a computer, they don't have computers. I mean, the whole hodgepodge of a mess that existed from then till now, the rise in mental health issues, suicide, depression, all the things. I think we have enough data to inform a shift, right? I guess the question is like, why hasn't the data been respected enough to like make the shift? And then lastly, I also think we need to kind of change our perspective on like who the experts are when we're trying to figure out what exactly our students need, what they're lacking, et cetera. Why don't we just ask them? You always hear me talk about the fact that we do things for students, we talk at them or to them, but sometimes we're not moving with them. We talk at parents, we do things for them, but we're not working with them. And it's like the real experts are the ones who are living through this, who are experiencing these things. So why not ask them and allow them to be our data point to inform the shifts that we're making? That's my final thought.
Right on, right on. Well, on behalf of the lovely Jubilee, the beard of knowledge, David Castillo, the man who won't have anything on his jacket, the real Dr. Charles Cole. This has been the South Star Classroom Kick-Ass Show today, everybody. 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central. Thank you to our audience. Shout out to Savannah, to Toya, and to Bill, as always, for your comments today. We'll see you all next week. Peace.